everybody. Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. Hope you're doing great on this Tuesday as we're moving on through the week, and I hope your day is off to a good start. I want to just jump right back in because today's content is very relevant in the time in which we live. We've looked at all the things so far, beginning with pride and lying tongue and hands that shed innocent blood, heart that devises wicked imaginations. Today we look at carrying that out. In the criminal world that I used to work in, you would hear procedures, you would hear charges, if you will, in the courtroom, and someone would be accused or charged with malice and aforethought. In other words, you thought about it, you contrived it in your mind, you conceived it in your mind, and then you went and did it. The thought was one thing, but the actual carrying it out is another. Many of us in the course of life have had a bad thought. Don't get me wrong. I'm not justifying anything or making it a simpler situation than what it should be. But in the recesses of our mind, because we're human, we've all had a bad thought. And when I say a bad thought, I mean the idea of hurting someone or seeking revenge or do whatever. It could go a multitude of different ways, don't get me wrong. But it was just a thought. It coursed its way through the brain waves for a moment. We didn't let it stop there. We didn't ponder on it. We didn't figure out, okay, what if maybe, I wonder if I could actually pull that off. Most of the time we don't do that. However, unfortunately and sadly, many do. But why? We got to go back to pride. And the pride and the lying and, you see how everything is born out of that, because the pride allows one to be convinced, not only that they're right, but that in some type of way they're justified to do what they're going to do. Today's lesson focuses on the next thing that God hates. And it says that God hates feet that are swift in running to mischief. Now think about that for a minute. When we picture feet running, we can look at a couple of different scenarios. We can think of the innocence and the fun of a child running through a playground. We can think of an athlete running the bases or running down the field toward the end zone. We think of the fun or the innocent side of that. We think of an Olympian running, the 800-meter race or whatever. We could come up with a million different scenarios about running. The person out exercising every morning, running around their neighborhood or whatever. But here, what we see leads more toward a willingness to fulfill something that's not good. Feet that are swift in running to mischief. In other words, I not only have a willingness to do it, I really want to do it now. I don't want to wait. I have a strong desire, an urgency, if you will. We talked about hands that shed innocent blood. So we look at the same concept. We get a literal physical illustration, hands, and now we have feet. That allows us to paint a picture in our mind to associate an action, hands that shed innocent blood. It is not the literal hands that we focus on as much as it is the action, the willingness to actually do it. God hates that. But now we see the next part of that, another body illustration, if you will. Feet that are swift in running. God's not angry with the person that wins the Olympic gold. God doesn't hate that competition. But the one that is running toward mischief, the one that is running toward the idea or the concept or again the what has been contrived in their mind that's going to hurt someone. It causes his children pain, therefore he hates that. It all goes back to pride. Again, I'm not being repetitive. There's a reason we need to understand that first part. It all comes out of that. Every bit of it comes out of that. Because as it grows, it builds. I grew up here in the deep South. I've traveled all over the world. I've been in different places. I've lived in a lot of different places. It's kind of a running joke around some of my inner circle. How many places have I been or whatever. But I remember growing up out on the family farm. And there was a vine there called a kudzu vine. Now, not everybody's heard of that. Many people have. If you know anything about that at all, not only is it invasive, but it is also dominant. In other words, if allowed to stay in place, if allowed to grow, and it is not removed, it is not reduced, it is not controlled, in just a very, very short amount of time, it'll take over. And then you won't just have one little patch, you'll have walls and walls, and it is truly unbelievable what it does. Pride, when not kept in check, gives birth to everything we see on this list. The lying tongue, the hands that shed the innocent blood, the wicked imaginations in the heart, feet running to mischief. It gives birth to all of those things when it's not kept in check. Because as it grows, it builds. And as we understand the concept of that, as it's building, it's what? It's getting stronger. Therefore, the willingness or the desire to do certain things no longer remains just a thought. Now we have hands that are willing to carry it out. We have hearts that are devising these wicked imaginations. And now we have feet that are off and running to make sure it takes place. So we see where God's hatred for this is found. It's not just the thought about it or the wicked imagination, but it is the actual willingness to carry it out. Oftentimes, under conviction, we may have a random thought come through our mind, but then immediately say, well, no, I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't say that, or I certainly shouldn't act on that. We think of not only the criminal maybe consequence or whatever the case, or the harm that it could cause, but those of us that are convicted because of our faith, we realize it displeases God, that it doesn't honor God, it doesn't show God to anybody in that. So we pass that thought, we rebuke that thought, we move past that moment. But the heart devising this wicked imagination, as I shared with you in the message yesterday, is the heart that doesn't know God. The passing thought, the fleeting thought is one thing, but the devising of a wicked imagination and then the willingness to carry it out. We have to understand what is the core of this? Where is it born from? Pride. I deserve this. I deserve to see this happen, or I deserve to see that person suffer. And we convince ourselves of that, the lying tongue. A pastor from old named Ironside, he said this: the feet will follow where the heart has already gone. Think about that. The feet will follow where the heart has already gone. So we quickly see two things coming together here: the wicked imagination of the heart and the willingness to see it through, the willingness to run toward it and carry it out. Not just think about it, but actually do it. Malice and a forethought. I want to do this. I want to accomplish this. I want to see this happen. And I'm going to go do it. Why would God hate something like that? Because if it is mischief, if we use that word mischief, and again, we're not talking about innocent fun or, making somebody jump or, or for a laugh. We're not talking about mischief in the sense of just innocent, harmless things. We're talking about things that are going to hurt someone. Rob, kill, destroy the enemy's targets. This type of thing, this willingness to carry out, there's nothing good in it. There's no good results. It produces nothing good. It brings harm. It brings pain. It brings hurt. It brings sadness. It brings loss and grief. And that list could just go on and on and on. So we see why God would hate that. Because he's not represented in any of that. Friends, when we follow these horrifying crimes that take place, whether it's the harming of a child, whether it's whatever, it could be a multitude of things: the assault on a young lady, kidnapping, murder, this Ponzi schemes that steal people's money, fraudulent things that steal fair competitions. Again, it could be where something's bought, paid for, to erroneously determine a different outcome. We could go all kinds of different places, and trust me, there's so much of that going on around us in our world today. The one that is devised, the wicked imagination, because they see that devisement, if that's a word, I'll just use it, creates some type of advantage for them. They don't care if it hurts somebody else. They don't care if they didn't win, really win. But if I can make you believe that I did, then that's all that matters. The wicked imagination and the feet that are swift to run toward it. If the heart creates this matter because of pride, and the feet are willing to carry it out, then what's the answer? What is the resolution to this? How do we correct this? To put it very clearly, it's a spiritual heart transplant. That's what must take place. This is why we need Jesus. This is why we need a relationship with the Lord. It has been said before, I've heard this saying probably many, many times, a lot of you have too, that when we're born, there's a God-sized hole in our heart. And only one thing can fix that. Only one thing can fill that void. And it's not wine, women, or song, or riches, or celebrity, or this or that. And that's another lesson about those things. Because I'm not talking bad about those. What I'm saying is we find this devising in our mind, this conjuring in our mind, all these different things that are going to make us happy, that are going to fulfill all of our needs, they're going to answer all of our questions, all of our problems, only for all of them to fail. They don't last. Maybe for a little while, but then they don't last. There's a reason for that. Because anything that puts us in a position to place something before God, in other words, make Him less than His place of being number one, anything that does that will not work. If we continue to pursue that, then we fail to read the sign that says dead end street. You've already got the answer. That road goes nowhere. Dead end. You can keep going down it all you want. It'll never have a way out. It'll never have a path on the other end of it that leads you to where you're looking for. That's what we do. The heart that devises wicked things, that it's, and conceives all these different things, the feet that is willing to carry it out, there's only one way to fix that. When we've looked at all these different things, from pride, arrogance, and lying, and on so on, on so on, so we see how all that ties together, and why God would hate the feet that are swift to wanting to carry that out. Because that person, that individual, is following a pathway that takes them in the opposite direction of where He desires for them to go. We think of this as a parent, and we look at our children, and if they go down directions that are unhealthy, they go down directions that do not have a good ending, it breaks our heart. And in many ways, we hate that. We don't hate them, but we hate the decisions they're making, or the things that they're following, the pursuit that they're after, the willingness to run swiftly toward mischief. We hate that because we know the results are not good. Whether it's because of experience and it's something that we too have done in an earlier time in life, or we're just able, because of a broader willingness to see things, we see the pending doom, the answer on the other end of it is not good. We see a time of great blindness in our world today. And I don't say that in any disrespectful manner toward those who literally cannot see, either having lost their vision to some accident or disease, or possibly even born without sight, but rather those who refuse to see. Ray Stevens, known for his comedy and all those things as such, the streak and all those different things over the years. His actual awarding, if you will, Grammys, came from the serious stuff. Back in 1970, 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, Everything is Beautiful came out. Huge, gigantic song, smash hit. But the one pivotal line in there for me is, there are none so blind as he who will not see. The Bible speaks of in end times there being willful ignorance, willful blindness. That means intentional. I don't want to see it. It might be right in front of me, but I'm not going to look at it. I don't want to see it because I want it my way. That's pride. And that's a lying tongue convincing you that it's not there. But friends, if there is a 9-foot tall, 12-foot tall grizzly bear standing in front of you, ready to eat you, you should never ignore that. The enemy is not hiding anymore. The enemy is not around the corner waiting to jump out and say, boo. The enemy is right in front of you. The enemy is not under the cover of night anymore. The enemy is saying, nobody's looking. So I can just do whatever I want right in front of them. And they won't believe it because I'll tell them they didn't actually see it. Then we go back to creation. We go back to the story of Adam and Eve. God told them clearly, don't touch that. Leave that alone. If you do, you shall surely die. The enemy comes along and says, oh, that's not what you heard. There was a pause. Well, wait a minute. I mean, didn't I? They knew they heard it. But the enemy is conniving and cunning. The wiles of the devil, as we talked about in our lessonry on the whole armor of God. And he comes in and he causes one to believe that you didn't actually see what you saw. Today's modern media has mastered that. You'll see something, and then they'll turn right around the very next day and tell you you didn't see it. That's the enemy at work. God hates the feet that are swift in running toward mischief. Be very, very mindful what you're running toward and the purpose behind the run. If it doesn't honor God, if it's not going to make your life better and the lives of those around you better, that's a strong indication you're on the wrong track. God bless you. We'll look tomorrow at the lying witness. What does that mean? Take care. Have a good day.